Hey everybody, sorry for the extended hiatus. My apartment was undergoing some very noisy renovations, so we couldn't record, and then I fell into a cryogenic freezer.
Yeah, that part was my fault, sorry.
But we should be good to go now.
And of course, when we were rescuing you, we had to fight off all these angry sewer mutants, and
That wasn't too bad, but then there was that alien invasion, and that really did a number on things.
the first alien invasion, that wasn't all that rough, but the second one, the Omicronian variant, oh man. The good thing is, Nova, your dog was still waiting for you outside, so.
Okay, so what's the next episode? It's Mars Day, and the Wong family is hosting a barbecue on their ranch. Amy's parents are happy to see her again, but they're less thrilled about the presence of her coworkers. Her boyfriend Kif, meanwhile, is nervous about meeting them, hoping to make a good impression. His fears prove well-founded as over the course of the barbecue, they prove less than impressed with the lieutenant. As the Wongs tell the tale of how their ancestors scammed ownership of the planet from the native Martians, giving them only a single bead in return, suddenly a dust storm appears on the horizon, and while everyone takes shelter in the Wong's mansion, their herd of buggalo are rustled under the cover of the storm. With all their buggalo gone, the family is ruined. It's then that Kif steps up, his plan to take the one remaining buggalo, a female named Betsy, on a cattle drive to the peak of Olympus Mons to draw the attention of the wrestlers and lure them out. When they arrive, they find the stolen buggalo hidden inside the mountain's crater. As they work to free the cattle and take them home, another dust storm approaches, and inside the rustlers appear, the native Martians controlling the storms and flying on a buggalo of their own. Amy claims that flying a buggalo is impossible, but the Martians retort that it's possible for one who truly respects the planet. The native Martians, understandably resentful for what the Wong family did to them generations ago, intended to steal the buggalo and ruin the Wongs, but now that Amy Wong has presented herself, they kidnap her instead and fly off, sending a ransom note demanding the return of the planet to them. In light of Kif's failure, the Wongs call in Zap Brannigan to negotiate with the native Martians, and so Zap, Kif, and the Planet Express crew head for the native Martian reservation deep underground. As Zap immediately botches the negotiations, the Martians call up another dust storm to swallow Amy, but Kif jumps on Betsy's back and flies into the heart of the storm, saving his love. With this act, Kif has demonstrated his reverence for Mother Mars and won the respect of the native Martians, and so they offer peace. Unfortunately, as Kif attempts to smoke the Martians' peace pipes to seal the truce, he chokes on the smoke, angering them, and so they sentence him to death, to be crushed beneath the weight of the very bead for which their ancestors traded away the planet. But when the bead is retrieved, it is revealed to actually be a massive diamond worth a fortune. When Amy informs the native Martian chief of the quote-unquote bead's true nature, the execution is called off, and their feelings of anger toward the Wongs are quelled. Everyone had assumed it was worthless and they had been scammed, but it turns out it was a misunderstanding. In the end, the native Martians leave in peace to use their newfound fortune to find a new home for themselves, and meanwhile, Amy and the others head back to the Wong mansion. The Wongs, of course, refuse to believe that Kif saved the day and give the credit to Zap instead. But Amy reassures Kif that it's all right that her parents don't like him, because she loves him, and that's all that matters. Welcome to Space Podcast 3000, where the future is in the past.
So first things first, Zoidberg is a complete asshole in this episode.
He really is. He talks about money-making bad people. He is the bad people.
I mean, Leone and Iz are disgustingly rich, so they kind of deserve it, but jeez, he really is just horrible to them.
Yeah, it sucks when someone comes into your home and takes all your stuff and does things without caring what you think about it. I'm sure it has nothing to do with the message of this episode.
I didn't even notice that parallel, but that's great. I wonder if that was intentional.
I don't know. It might have been. If it was intentional, they may have hit on it a bit longer, or like had at least one joke about it, but I don't know.
Like So yeah, like on that subject, the story of the native Martians selling the planet for a single bead is quite obviously based on that myth that the Native Americans sold New York to the Dutch for a bunch of beads, which like I mean, even the idea of the Native American tribes having no concept of ownership, which supposedly is part of it, is ludicrous. Like, at worst, you might be able to claim they didn't really understand the concept of owning land specifically. And even that's debatable.
Yeah,
But,
so
like,
this whole episode really is kind of based on the mythology of the Native Americans, less so the actual history.
yeah, and, like, in fairness, the idea of being able to own land is pretty stupid to begin with, and sits at the core of most of our problems throughout history. You know, the idea of rent seeking and rent seeking with land in particular, and territory and borders and whatnot. Like most historical conflict really stems from this.
Monkey killing monkey over pieces of the ground.
Yeah, basically. And the native Martians themselves are just every single Native American stereotype thrown into a blender, and it just sucks.
It's just so uncomfortable having to watch it.
Uh-huh.
And they're not. They get the short end of it, but like the Wongs are obviously Asian stereotypes as well, especially the sort of. I forget. I'm not sure what the term would be. I want to say gentrified Asians, but that's not correct. But the ones that are like kind of Americanized, that they come to America and they immediately start dressing all Westerny and everything, because that's the perception that they have of America from like Westerns and things. And like even the idea of the motto over their ranch, "You've come to the Wong place." I really like that joke, because it seems like the kind of thing that if like someone with the name of Wong were like if they understood the pun themselves, they would probably totally be on board, ironically, using something like that. Like, but the Wongs don't seem to be. They seem to be oblivious to that. That's sort of a pun.
I like the pun.
Like the way that the Wongs are portrayed in this.
It's a fun pun, but
Despite what I said about the Native Martians and their depiction just being complete garbage, there are some really good jokes in this episode, like "You've come to the wrong place," as you pointed out, or the background gag of this farmhand unrolling soil and corn plants like a rug.
this episode's, aside from the massive racism.
We own so much that we find it easier to just brand everything that isn't ours.
Yes, speaking of which, so they supposedly own the entire Western Hemisphere, and I think they say they have, like, what, 17.9 billion acres, I think it was? That is indeed approximately half the surface area of the planet of Mars.
Huh, neat.
So once again, the math is right.
Well, yeah, it seems like the easy enough thing to look up when they're writing the episode, so...
True, but, they went to the effort. Not everyone would have. Although one thing that bugs me is Leo saying, "We finally get to spend some time with this Mr. Kiff." The way he words that implies, like, that they never met him, even though they're the ones who introduced Amy to him in the first place.
I guess it's sort of a retcon.
I mean, I don't know if it's a retcon or a writer just forgetting, or maybe they probably thought no one would notice. I don't know, but I'm probably reading too much into it, but it's something
or maybe
they
introduced her to him having not really spent time with him before. They knew he was a single guy, so they hooked her up with him, which does not seem outside of the realm of possibility for them to do to her.
Yeah, like, okay, this whole parents pressuring their kids to have kids of their own thing. Y'all need to stop fucking doing that. Parents, stop pushing your kids to give you grandchildren.
Especially in this economy.
Like, they likely have plans for their life, and yeah, especially with, like, the current economy and everything going on in the world. The fuck? It is honestly super entitled to demand grandkids from your children.
Although, I mean, my only experience with that is seeing stuff on TV. That I have not encountered that sort of pressure at all in my life from anybody. So,
I haven't either.
That's just me speaking personally, but I don't know, and in fact, I don't really know anybody else who has experienced that, so I don't know if we are reading into something that doesn't actually happen. But I mean, like, we've seen all the stuff, like the cliches of it, but I'm not sure if it's how common it actually is.
It's definitely possible.
Yeah, it wasn't exactly pressure, but my dad's parents really did want grandkids. So they're like, oh, when you having kids and whatnot before, my sister and I were born. But I don't know if it was like, oh, get a girlfriend and have grandkids, stuff like that.
Yeah, it's probably a bit more subtle than it's usually depicted on TV.
Yeah.
Well, of course, like, TV has to use shorthand and everything, but yeah.
Yeah. Although, on this subject of Amy's parents, why is Kif so concerned about them considering him manly? Like, who gives a shit what they think? The only opinion that really matters is Amy's. It's your relationship, not theirs.
Which is what they do indeed show in the episodes. Like, he is so concerned about her parents liking him that, yeah, and she's like, it doesn't matter. If they liked you, I wouldn't like you. It's what is what teenage girls do.
And really, Amy and Kif are really cute in this episode.
Oh yeah, they're really adorable in this episode.
Like, they legitimately have one of the healthiest relationships in the entire show, just consistently. Like, they're a really good couple.
Yeah, they really are. It's nice. It's nice to actually see that sort of thing. Especially when adult TV shows or... There's a lot of bad relationships in TV shows of this genre. Because it's funnier for the couples to be so toxic.
Well, I mean, yeah, that is, you are writing, if you're writing comedy or you're writing drama comes from conflict, and humor comes from conflict, and humor comes from pain, so obviously having people in a nice relationship is nice to see, but it doesn't necessarily make for good TV. That's the thing. That's the issue. Is like, people see these things and oftentimes they don't realize that these are an exaggerated example of real life. They have to be exaggerated to fit in the running time and to be entertaining and everything, because real life is mostly boring.
Except you can get entertainment and some fun jokes and drama out of people being in a healthy relationship. Like, you could have them maybe have, disagreements over, whatever little thing, and, keep it civil, but you can very much get material from that.
Exactly. I mean, you don't have to have every character in an abusive relationship and everything, but it certainly does make for more entertaining stuff, even if it's not a healthy representation.
I think it's less a matter of being more entertaining and more just that it's a lot easier. Because, like, you can do this with, healthy, good, long-term relationships. It's just more of a challenge.
Right. Even so much so that sometimes having someone in a healthy relationship is the joke. You look at the Addams family, and the fact that they have such a great relationship with each other and their kids, but the whole joke is the fact that people don't expect them to be a functional family.
Well,
they're weird.
Yeah, I feel like that was part of the joke with the Addams family, that they're supposed to be, like, the opposite, what's really unusual compared to the average couple. And so the fact that they actually like each other and really get along feels like it was meant to be holding up a dark mirror against, a lot of couples, and presenting that level of being affectionate and loving as not the norm.
If you look at the honeymooners or them that fight all the time, it's like, this is a standard relationship. It's like, yeah, right.
And, like, in this episode, Zap making a joke about,
right. Yes, exactly.
But, like, she sounds like a wife because she won't leave you alone. I'm just like, fuck
and they literally
you.
have a tumbleweed go by.
Yeah, the episode itself says "fuck you" to Zap.
Just seriously though, like, judging by how much I have seen straight people joke about hating their spouses, just are they okay? Are the straights okay?
I don't think that's necessarily a straight thing. That's more of a boomer thing. Because you see this kind of stuff in a lot of, like, boomer humor boomer humor dumps. It's like, I'm gonna hand me my hair dryer. He hands her a gun,
I'm lucky enough to have had parents who love each other very much and are still extremely into each other even after decades of marriage.
My parents have their issues, but I do think they still care about each other.
And then, of course, you lead into the whole thing, like, when are you getting married and having kids? Like, what, so I could be stuck with a spouse that I don't actually care for, like you did?
Like, as soon as Leo doesn't have money, she's like, I want a divorce.
Yeah, I have to wonder how well Leo and Inez actually get along behind closed doors.
Yeah, they do seem to be pretty... Leo has an interesting character to develop, like, has an interesting character presentation where you sort of get that he's a stereotype, like I said, but then Inez, yeah, you don't really get much of a beat on her character. Just that she wants Amy to have a kids.
All that I can really think about with Inez's character, yeah, is that she wants to have grandchildren, and yeah, I really can't think of any other character traits from her.
Yeah, both parents have pretty shallow personalities, which I guess is the point.
I do appreciate the fact that they have no problem the fact that Kif is an alien. They just want him to be, like, manly. They want him to be a worthy husband for Amy.
I guess points to them for not being racist?
To whatever Kif is, anyway.
Yeah, well, like, congratulations, bare minimum award. So there was a joke there where Hermes stands up to try to take charge before Kif interrupts, but, like, what was he gonna do? Find the cows via accounting or limbo?
Accounting?
No,
I honestly, Hermes may be one of the better qualified people to handle this sort of thing.
Teasy, no, that joke, no, go to the corner.
Okay.
But, yeah, it would be really interesting to see what Hermes would have done in this situation. I guess it's because he's the one to typically take charge when it comes to episodes. Well, not necessarily episodes, but whatever's going on in the Planet Express.
Is he?
I guess. I mean, legally.
Because he's mainly just in the background managing stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he manages their finances. He makes sure that they're keeping everything in terms of legal stuff. So this may be a thing since the Buggalo were stolen, so it is kind of a legal issue.
Maybe? I'm just not sure what legal recourse they would have if they don't know who the kidnappers are.
Well, they'd have to find the kidnappers, and then legal recourse.
True. I mean, I guess insurance could be an option, but what insurance company could afford to pay for their estate?
I don't know.
Let's talk about the big stone face.
Oh god, yes, the great stone face of Mars. I love that joke where Leela's like, what about the great stone ass of Mars? It's like, yeah, but it's on the other side of the planet. That is the best joke in the episode. Just flat out, no question.
But when then they reveal the whole thing, would the ass really be on the other side of the planet, or it would just be several meters down?
True, because the whole thing is just kind of like this body, just a carved body. But I mean, I do remember when the giant face on Mars was a thing, and it really did become this major mythological argument. It's like alien life, proof of alien life on Mars. Then they took better photos of it, and it's just a trick of the light and shadow, so it looked like a face. And pareidolia will do that for you. It's like things look like a face, but this thing really did look like a fucking face. It looked like an Easter Island head, really.
Well, I mean, it's like people who look at the moon and see a face, hence the whole man in the moon thing, and I'm just like, I don't see it.
The man in the moon, there's like the Japanese see a rabbit in the moon, which is why Sailor Moon, this is why her Japanese name is Usagi.
Yeah, I could honestly, I can see the rabbit. I when I look at the moon after hearing about it's like, yeah, no, I definitely see the rabbit. But don't see a face. If you look at
the stone face, like the early photos of the stone face, yeah, it really does look like a face. It looks like an Easter Island head, and the Easter Island head actually were heads. Well, they later discovered that they had bodies, but so I'm sure that's what the precedent was. They find this thing, it looks like a giant face on Mars. And it's like, holy shit, it's like an Easter Island monument, and we've not been there, so something weird's going on.
Yeah, but lots of things can look like faces, like cars.
Or also on Mars, Gall Crater.
Yeah, TZ, you mentioned pareidolia. That's definitely a thing. Humans will see faces in anything.
Yes.
Anyway, moving on. It's really cute, I think, when Betsy ends up tackling and licking Kif. Like,
yeah, the presence of the native species of Mars. I don't even think they would be the native species, but just all the cattle and animals are bugs. Which is like,
I mean, didn't we see them on the moon, or was that something else?
We saw some in a farm on the moon, but they might not have been native to the moon. Who knows where they come from? But
I mean, if the native Martians have a connection with them, then I guess they're probably native to Mars.
Possibly,
maybe?
Yeah.
But I do it's cute where Betsy, tackles and starts licking Kif, because I hear cows can actually be pretty affectionate.
Yeah. But also, it's cute when your pet approves of your significant other.
Yes. A friend of mine actually won over his future wife's parents because they had a cat who was typically very antisocial, but he knew how to win the cat over very quickly.
Aww.
And in doing so, won over her parents.
I remember hearing a story about a guy who had a very affectionate cat, but he would always tell people that the cat never likes others, just so that they would feel special when the cat played with him.
I saw that post, yeah, it's cute. It's a very sweet thing to do.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, we've also got Bender singing the spoof of the theme song to Bonanza, which, for those outside the United States, that was a very popular Western TV show originally in the 60s. And I think it was one of the longest running American TV shows ever. And it is.
Yeah, it ran for a very long time.
And I think it's still in syndication.
Yeah, I think my dad watches that frequently. Because he's always watching Westerns.
Well, it was hugely popular back in the day.
Yeah, it's crazy how how spaghetti Westerns of Italy became what we typically see of Westerns in the Americas. Parody became the mainstay.
Well, I wouldn't say that it was parody necessarily,
not exactly.
as much as
purposeful parody, at least. Authenticity.
Yeah, it's a really interesting case of cultural cross-pollination, because you have, this Italian spin on an American film genre that then influenced the United States in turn, and to the point where most modern American Westerns would qualify as spaghetti Westerns. And then even the term spaghetti Western comes from, spaghetti, which the American take on spaghetti, this concept of spaghetti and meatballs, is not traditional Italian. It's the result of
it.
Really
you can't
is.
Get that in Italy.
Circle.
The pasta is a completely different thing from the bolognese sauce. They really do not go together.
Yeah, it's a really interesting case of cross-pollination, like I said, that you had all of this back and forth resulting in the modern Western. And, of course, you can find a lot of parallels between Westerns and, samurai movies from Japan, to the point where multiple Clint Eastwood Westerns are just straight-up remakes of Akira Kurosawa samurai movies. The Magnificent Seven is literally just Seven Samurai, or A Fistful of Dollars, I believe, is just Yojimbo.
Or you look at Star Wars, which is almost a straight-up remake of the Secret Fortress.
There are definitely a lot of parallels there, yeah. Plus, influence from the old Buck Rogers serials, or Flash Gordon, rather.
Everything has its roots in everything else.
Yeah. Which is why they say the good artists borrow, great artists steal.
Well, even beyond that, globalism is nothing new. Cultures have exchanged and borrowed things from each other pretty much as long as different groups of humans have had contact.
Yeah.
You know, like lots of things that we associate with a given culture, very good odds that it was at least influenced by other cultures. There are really no one's insular. No man is an island.
Yeah. Tomatoes are not Italian by any means.
And potatoes aren't Irish.
Nope.
So, again, the stereotypes of the native Martians.
Yeah.
They could have been creative.
This is weird because, I mean, it's not like these stereotypes were not realized at the time, because this concept was brought up in an episode of Seinfeld as well. That he's trying to avoid using these particular terms because he ends up dating a Native American woman. And so he's like trying to avoid using certain terms like, I bought tickets from a scalper, or
Well, scalping wasn't really a Native American thing. Like, okay, that was having scalping being associated with Native Americans is fucking atrocious, because that literally started as a thing that the settlers did. Like,
right.
The settlers did it to the Native Americans first. And then over time, when they started doing it back in sort of the payback, it became more associated with them, and just the dominant oppressive culture choosing the framing.
Yeah.
And, like, I'm not qualified to speak on, Native American stereotypes, because I am not Native American. I'm Jewish, an entirely different thing. So, I have an outside perspective, but, like, I can say that this whole underground reservation thing fucking depresses me, because, like, it clearly is not a good place for them to be living, which is very much true to life from what I hear about actual Native American reservations.
Are shitty.
Yeah, exactly. And of course the fact that Zap just continues to rub it in their face, like, land, if you're not familiar, land is the thing that's underneath sky. So he's just like saying, yeah, you don't own land, you live underground, you little tunnel dwellers. It's like, goddamn, Zap, shut the fuck up.
Seriously, on reservations, poverty is rampant. They often don't even have, like, clean water or reliable sources of food or supplies. It's basically impossible to get law enforcement to investigate anything. In fact, like, sexual assault from outsiders, like people literally going onto the reservations, doing horrible things, and then leaving, and then local law enforcement just refuses to do anything about it. This is really common. And even beyond all of this, like, the reservations are supposedly their own sovereign land, so, like, they don't pay federal taxes because they're not technically part of the United States, they're their own thing, but that sovereignty is violated just all the time. Whenever it's convenient for the United States to violate the sovereignty of Native American reservations, they will fucking do it. Like, you have all of these, these pipelines being built through their land, or, just various other shit being done, and they don't have any of the power in the situation. This colonization never ended. There's no justice to any of this. And yet, so many people still believe that these reservations were some form of reparations, when, like, no. It's really not. And then you even have here, like, Zap making the Mount Rushmore joke, like, you give us the girl and we'll carve our president's face into your sacred mountain. So, yes, in case you didn't know, that is true. 6 grandfathers, the mountain that Mount Rushmore is carved into, was indeed a sacred mountain to the Lakota people, and beyond just the fact that this was a sacred place to them, the sculptor, Guston Borglum, was deeply involved with the KKK. And, as if that wasn't enough, the whole thing was in direct violation of a treaty with the Lakota people that already existed for a long time by that point, that said the Black Hills were theirs in perpetuity. So, Mount Rushmore in its entirety is just such a deeply racist thing.
And in fact, never even finished, either.
Like, the Supreme Court In fact, like this is like so bad that the Supreme Court actually granted the Lakota a huge cash settlement over it in 1980, but the Lakota straight up rejected it. Like, they still have not accepted the settlement, which continues to accumulate interest over time. I think it's like more than $1 billion now.
Wow.
Because they just refuse to accept the money, they are still demanding the full return of their land instead.
That's fair.
And you know what? Good on them. They should.
I mean, they should get their land back, obviously, but wouldn't they be able to just purchase it?
With that kind of money, they can buy their own planet.
God, yeah, it's easy.
I mean, that's not the point, obviously.
I know.
But, you know, that is a good point. Like, the whole diamond thing in this episode, where it turns out the quote-unquote bead is actually a massive diamond, and it was a fair deal, and once they realize they're okay with it, that just feels like such a cop-out.
It does.
Like, I know this is supposed to be a light comedy, and they don't want to get into the real-life situation and all of the injustice of it, and the need for reparations, but it really does feel like a cop-out.
Mm.
Although, I mean, it also kind of raises the question, and this is getting into really kind of meta territory, but like, in the future, are diamonds really all that rare, especially diamonds of that size? You'd think they'd be able to manufacture them in greater numbers and quantity, and especially if they're exploring the furthest reaches of the universe, they'd find diamonds fucking everywhere.
Oh, sure, but you also have, like, with the synthetic diamonds, you have the diamond industry, you know, doing all of this depressingly successful propaganda to convince people that natural diamonds are still somehow better.
Right.
Yeah, but we don't know if that's that same way 1,000 years in the future. But that's still a pretty...
The diamond only has value in the sense that they aspire value to it. So it's just like we have a concept of ownership, or we have a concept of value, and so which I guess it sort of seems apropos that they would use the concept of value against the colonizers. Like, yeah, you want the land back, you have this massive diamond that you say is worth a lot of money. We don't necessarily believe it, but you believe it is, so let's deal.
I mean, it's still a huge honking diamond. I mean, it's probably worth something even if diamonds are not rare.
I mean, yeah, there are definitely applications for diamonds. Like, they're the hardest material on the planet.
Yeah, but even then, synthetic diamonds work just perfectly for that sort of thing, so...
True, I guess.
Diamond water.
Oh my god.
Diamond cream.
That would probably be horrible for your skin.
No, someone turned diamonds into carbon dioxide to carbonize water. I'll have to send you the video. It's great.
Interesting.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
Let's get back on topic.
I think that's pretty much it, actually, for this episode.
Yeah.
So, can I come out of the corner now? Thank you for listening to Space Podcast 3000. Your three voices of the future are Nova Altman, Doug Hancox, and Eden Valerie. The theme music is Voxel Revolution by Kevin MacLeod. You can support the show and listen to new episodes a full week early at patreon.com/spacepod3k. Follow us on Twitter at spacepod3k. Be sure to join us next time as the Planet Express crew fly over the Cuckoo's Nest in Insane in the Mainframe.